good evening, or perhaps good night. If you're here, your eyes might already feel a little heavy. The world outside is quiet now, and all that's left is the soft sound of your breathing. Tonight, we'll drift together across a story of the endless sea, where sailors once feared what they could not see. So settle in, feel the calm like a blanket, the soft warmth of an imagined campfire, and the rhythm of the waves beneath you. Let's begin our journey. Before we set sail, may I ask, from which country are you listening tonight? And what time is it where you are? Maybe it's almost midnight. Maybe dawn is just beginning. Before we go further, if you enjoy peaceful stories like this, you can gently press the like button or subscribe. You don't have to do it now, just whenever your eyes start to close. For now, let's stay here, in this quiet sea of history. The ocean has always been a place of wonder and worry. For centuries, sailors have crossed its endless blue surface, guided only by stars and memory. In the day, the sea shines like glass, but at night, it turns into a mirror of the sky and endless reflection of silence. Some said it was peaceful, others that it was lonely beyond measure. Imagine standing on the deck of an old wooden ship. The sails are breathing slowly in the wind. The air tastes of salt and mist. Around you, nothing but water stretching further than sight itself. There's no sound, no shore, only the distant creak of wood and the heartbeat in your chest. This was the world those sailors knew. When the sea was calm for too long, their thoughts began to wander. They spoke in whispers, telling each other quiet stories to stay awake. The ocean, after all, loves silence, and when it listened too closely, strange tales began to rise from its depths. You're safe here. You're listening from the comfort of your room. The waves are only in your imagination now, moving slowly with your breath. Inhale, exhale. The sound of the sea fades in and out with you. As the stars appeared, the sailors would look up sometimes, seeing the Milky Way stretch like a bridge across the dark. It reminded them of home, but it also made them feel small. The sky above, the sea below, and between them, only the fragile wood of their ship. It was easy to believe that something unseen was out there, moving quietly between the waves. They called the ocean a living thing, though they knew it was only water and wind. Yet, it moved with moods peaceful one day, furious the next. The sea could take, and it could give. It was a reminder of how small human strength truly was, and that thought alone could make even the bravest sailor shiver. If you close your eyes now, you might picture it a soft flicker of lantern light on the deck, the glow of a distant horizon, and the faint hum of waves brushing against the hull. The night is still, but your mind begins to drift, just as theirs did, into stories that have no clear beginning or end. If your thoughts start to wander, that's okay. Let them drift. You're not meant to focus too hard tonight. Just let the rhythm carry you, like the ocean carrying a small ship through the dark. You're safe, and the story will be here, waiting. The sailors believed that every sound carried meaning. A distant creak might be wood shifting, or something watching. A shimmer on the water might be moonlight, or a ship far away, appearing and vanishing with the mist. Their world was made of uncertainty, and in that space, legends began to breathe. Some nights, the fog would rise suddenly, thick and soundless. The sailors would watch as it rolled over the waves like a curtain. Within that soft grey, everything disappeared, the stars, the moon, even the line between sea and sky. In that stillness, imagination became louder than the wind. One sailor might swear he saw a flicker of light on the horizon. Another might insist it was a lantern swinging from a mast. But no one could be certain. The human mind, when left alone with the sea, often begins to draw shapes out of shadows. That was how the first ghost ships were born, not from the sea, but from the silence within. When dawn finally arrived, the fog would thin and fade, leaving behind only ripples and pale sunlight. The sailors would look out and pretend nothing had happened. But deep inside, they carried that quiet, uneasy question they never said aloud. What if something truly was there, watching? If your thoughts start to wander, that's all right. The story moves gently, just like the tide. You can close your eyes and let the words drift past you, as if they're waves, touching the shore of your mind. As the days passed, the ocean began to feel endless. Every direction looked the same. The sky blended into the water, and the ship felt like a floating island in a world with no edges. That's when fear and wonder began to merge. The sailors were not just afraid of storms, they were afraid of the unknown that surrounded them completely. Sometimes, at night, they would gather near a small lantern. One would hum an old song, another would tell a story from home. The firelight would dance across tired faces. It reminded them that they were human, that they still belonged to something warm, even out here where the sea seemed to have no end. There was comfort in those quiet moments. The creak of the ship, the smell of salt and tar, the soft rhythm of waves below. For a little while, they could forget the loneliness and the endless horizon pressing against their minds. But once the night grew still again, the whispers would return, soft, uncertain, like echoes from somewhere far beyond the mist. You don't have to stay awake. The story can keep going without you. You can rest. Let your mind drift with the waves, slow and weightless. You're safe, and everything here moves at the pace of calm water. Even after months at sea, the feeling never left them. That mixture of awe and fear. The sense that the ocean was listening, that every sound, the wind, the rope, the sigh of the sails, was part of something alive, something vast, something that could never be fully understood. And so, each night, as the stars returned to their quiet positions above, the sailors stood watch over the horizon. They didn't search for land or treasure, they simply watched, waiting for the line between sky and water to reveal its secrets. The sea gave no answers, only silence. And in that silence, their stories of ghostly lights, distant ships, and endless waves were born again. It's all right to let go now. The sea is calm, the night is long, and your thoughts can rest like anchors sinking gently to the ocean floor. The horizon will still be there in the morning, endless and quiet, just as it has always been. There's a moment, after the fog clears and the sea becomes still again, when silence feels heavier than sound. It's in that silence where legends begin, born not from sight, but from imagination. When the world was made only of waves and stars, stories became a kind of light that kept the sailors awake and comforted. Every voyage was a test of patience and courage. Weeks could pass without sight of land, and the same faces became both family and mirror. The ocean gave them no distraction, only time to think. And so, they filled that time with stories, quiet tales, whispered under the sails, carried away by the wind. Some tales were meant to make others laugh. Some were told to pass the long hours of night. But some were spoken in low voices when the sea was too calm and the wind refused to move. Stories about ships that appeared from nowhere, about crews that never aged, about vessels that sailed without a living soul on board. You can breathe slowly here. Let your body grow still, like the sea before dawn. The story will move softly, and your thoughts can drift wherever they wish. No one really knows when the first ghost ship story was told, but for centuries, sailors believed the sea could remember, that it held memories of every ship that sank, every storm that raged, every farewell never answered. They said sometimes those memories returned taking shape as glowing sails on the horizon. In truth, they weren't trying to frighten each other. The stories were a way to make sense of what they couldn't explain. Lights that shimmered at night, voices carried by the wind, shapes that looked like ships, but moved with no sound at all. It was easier to call them ghosts than to admit they simply didn't know. Your eyes might grow heavier now. That's all right. You don't need to hold on to every word. Just let the rhythm of the story keep you floating, gently, like driftwood on calm water. These legends were never written down. They lived only in memory, passed from one voice to another. When one sailor told a story, another would add to it, shaping it, softening it, like waves shaping the sand. Each telling changed a little, until no one remembered where it truly began. Imagine a circle of tired sailors, sitting beneath a single lantern. The light flickers on their weathered faces. The sea groans softly below. One of them begins to speak slowly, his voice steady and low, and the others listen, eyes half closed, drifting between wakefulness and dream. For them, these stories weren't just about fear. They were about connection, a shared heartbeat across endless miles of ocean. When you live surrounded by silence, even a whisper becomes something sacred. The waves are steady now. You can rest your thoughts, let them ebb and flow like water meeting shore. The story is here to keep you company until sleep takes you. When a ship sailed into the open ocean, far from any coastline, every creak of the wood became a kind of music. It was the language of the sea, soft, slow, and unpredictable. And within that rhythm, the sailors found space for their imagination to drift. Some said the ocean itself listened, that it carried the stories from one ship to another, like invisible waves of memory. Perhaps that was why the same legends appeared in distant ports, told by people who had never met, yet shared the same quiet fears. Night after night, as the lantern light swayed and the stars glimmered above, the line between story and truth began to blur. A whispered tale could feel as real as the salt on their lips. The human mind, in the stillness of the sea, could paint entire worlds with a single thought. The sea around you is calm. You're safe here, surrounded by gentle words and quiet sound. Let the story move through you, like wind through the sails. There was one belief that many sailors held close, that stories had power. If spoken often enough, they could almost become real. Not in a magical way, but in the way memory does. When many voices imagine the same thing, it begins to live in the mind of the world. And perhaps that is how ghost ships found their place, not on the water, but in the hearts of those who sailed it. These legends became a kind of map, a way to understand the dangers of the sea without needing to see them. A ship that vanished in a storm became a warning. A drifting light in the fog became a sign of change. Each tale carried wisdom, wrapped in mystery. If you're still awake, you can let your breath follow the waves, slow, steady, peaceful. The story doesn't need your full attention. It only asks that you rest. In time, even those who didn't believe the tales still repeated them, because silence on the ocean could be heavy, and a story was a kind of companion. Something to fill the space between the creak of ropes and the crash of distant waves. And so, across centuries, the legends traveled, changing shape, changing tone, but always staying close to the human heart. They were not just about fear, but about wonder, about how small we feel before the vastness of the world, and how stories help us find comfort in that space. You can rest now. The sea is endless, but gentle. The lantern still burns softly, and the voices of sailors long gone still whisper through the calm. Their stories have no end, only waves that fade into sleep. There is something hauntingly beautiful about the horizon where sky and sea blend into one endless shade of blue. For the sailors of old, that line between worlds was where mystery began. Sometimes, when the light shifted and the air grew still, they saw shapes that shouldn't be there. Ships that moved without sound, sails that glowed faintly in the moonlight. No one ever spoke too loudly when it happened. The crew would stand together on deck, watching in silence. Some thought their eyes were playing tricks. Others believed they were witnessing something beyond reason. The sea, after all, has a way of showing things that vanish the moment you blink. As the distance between ships closed, strange details would appear. A mast with no flag, sails that didn't ripple even in the wind. The vessel would drift slowly across the water, silent and steady, as though carried by invisible hands. It felt wrong, too still, too perfect. You're safe here. Let the rhythm of the story move like a tide inside your mind. You don't need to picture everything clearly. Just drift with the sound, as if your thoughts were small boats on calm waves. When fog began to form, the mystery deepened. The horizon disappeared, and with it, the sense of direction. A sailor could stand only a few steps from his friend and see nothing but white. That was when the whispers started. Someone might say they saw another ship right there, through the mist. But when they looked again, it was gone. The ocean loves to play with light. Sunlight and temperature can bend reflections, turning distant ships into ghostly visions. But to those who lived upon the sea, that knowledge was beyond reach. All they knew was what they saw, what they felt. And sometimes, feeling alone in the middle of nowhere made the impossible seem real. If your eyes grow heavy, that's perfectly fine. The story can flow without you. Each word is a small wave, each pause a breath of wind. You can rest and still be part of this quiet voyage. On calm nights, the water could be so smooth it reflected the sky like glass. Looking down was like staring into another world. When a shadow crossed that reflection, sailors said it was a warning, a ship beneath the surface, or a spirit passing through. They didn't know what to believe, but they never looked too long. Those who spent their lives at sea learned one truth: the mind, when faced with endless silence, begins to fill it with its own creations. A sound becomes a whisper. A flicker of light becomes a sail. The human heart, surrounded by darkness, creates company out of imagination. Breathe slowly. The sea has no rush, and neither do you. Let your thoughts come and go, like small ripples touching the shore of your mind. The night deepened, and the ghostly shapes returned again and again. Some sailors claimed they could hear faint music drifting across the waves. Others said the ships turned toward them before fading into the fog. Whether real or illusion, the effect was the same: a quiet awe, a lingering chill, and a story that no one could forget. When dawn began to rise, the colors of the ocean shifted from black to silver. The ghostly ships, if they were ever truly there, always vanished before daylight. Sailors would search the horizon, rubbing sleep from their eyes, but the water would be empty again. Only the wind remained, as if the night had carried away its own secrets. They told themselves it was nothing, just fog, or light, or dreams born from exhaustion. But when the next calm night arrived, and the sea grew still once more, every man's gaze would return to that same horizon, waiting for something to appear again. The memory of what they'd seen was soft, yet heavy, like a song they couldn't stop hearing. Some said the ghost ships were omens, that they appeared to warn of storms, or loss, or change. Others believed they were echoes of the past ships that once sailed proudly, now repeating their journey endlessly. But most sailors simply stayed quiet. It was safer not to explain what the heart couldn't understand. It's all right to drift. You don't need to solve the mystery either. Let the story fold around you like a blanket, and breathe in the calm rhythm of the sea. The words are here only to keep you company, not to demand your attention. On rare nights, when the moon was bright and the air clear, the sea itself would glow faintly. Tiny living lights, called plankton, shimmered with every wave. Two tired eyes, the ocean looked alive, waves sparkling like moving stars. Some sailors thought this glow was the wake of invisible ships, passing quietly through the night. Science would later explain it, of course. The light came from the smallest creatures, stirred by motion, glowing briefly in defense. But for those who sailed before such knowledge, the sight was something else entirely, a living wonder that whispered of spirits and fate. If you're still awake, let your breathing match the sea's slow rhythm. You can close your eyes now. The story will continue gently, even if your mind begins to fade into dreams. And still, the stories grew. Each port added a new detail, a new fear, a new voice. A ghost ship seen in the north became the same ship seen in the south, always wandering, always silent. The sea, it seemed, carried the tale itself, passing it from one sailor to another like a message written in the waves. The more they spoke of it, the more real it became. Even those who laughed at the idea would find themselves watching the mist a little longer than before. Sometimes, they said, when you look too long into the fog begins to look back. You can let go now. The sea is calm, the air still. The mysterious ships are gone, leaving only ripples behind. The story slows here, gently fading like moonlight on water, with no ending and no hurry, only rest, and quiet, and the steady sound of sleep approaching. There came a time when stories turned into encounters. Sailors began to speak of ships that didn't just appear and vanish, but drifted, slowly and silently, across the open sea. They looked real, solid, weathered by salt and time. Yet when sailors called out, there was no answer, no movement, only stillness. These were the silent ships, and they carried a quiet that felt heavier than fear. When brave crews approached these drifting vessels, they often found something unsettling. Everything was in place, ropes neatly coiled, sails still drawn, and food left untouched on wooden tables. Lanterns swung faintly, still burning, but no one was there. Not a single voice, not a single footstep. It was as if the crew had simply vanished into the wind, leaving their ship behind like an empty shell floating through time. You're safe and calm. Breathe with the rhythm of the waves. Imagine the soft creak of wood and the scent of salt in the air. The story will carry you gently forward. The sailors who found these ships never stayed long. The silence was too deep, so deep it felt alive. Some said it pressed against their ears, as if the sea itself was listening. They would take what supplies they needed, then leave quickly, whispering prayers as they rowed away. Once they were back aboard their own ship, the sound of human voices felt like a blessing, a proof that they still belonged to the living world. Those who heard such stories began to avoid certain waters. They claimed those were places where the sea kept secrets, where even sound refused to stay. Ships that entered those regions sometimes returned, but changed, haunted not by ghosts, but by the memory of absolute silence. The ocean, vast and endless, can hold more emptiness than the human mind was ever meant to know. Let that emptiness become peace for you. The silence in this story is not frightening, it's soothing, like a pause between heartbeats. You can rest here for a moment, breathing softly, drifting safely between the words. Many historians later believed these abandoned ships had natural explanations: storms, illness, or desperate attempts to survive gone wrong. Yet for those who lived in that era, logic was never enough. What they felt was stronger than fact, the sense that the ocean watched, remembered, and sometimes took what it wished to keep. The silent ships were a reminder that control, no matter how strong, was an illusion on the open sea. Your thoughts can rest now. The water is calm, the story slow. You're not meant to solve it, only to feel the quiet space it leaves behind. The night grows softer with each breath, and the sea, like your mind, begins to fall into stillness. When sailors spoke of these empty vessels, they never raised their voices. The memory of silence seemed to linger in their throats. They described how the air around such ships felt heavy, as if sound itself refused to cross the water. Even the gulls stayed away. The world would narrow into stillness, where only the slow rhythm of the sea remained a heartbeat beneath the waves. You are safe. The silence in this story is gentle. It belongs to the night, not to fear. Breathe slowly. Let the words fade into a hum somewhere between thought and dream. Sometimes sailors returned to find that the ship they once saw had vanished without trace. No wreckage, no drifting wood, nothing, just open sea. It was as if the ocean had swallowed it whole. And perhaps, in some quiet way, that was true. The sea keeps what it takes, not out of malice, but out of nature, just as wind takes the scent of rain and carries it away. Others claimed that on rare nights they saw lights flickering far in the distance, moving slowly across the water. The same color as lanterns, the same steady globe, but with no ship beneath them. These were said to be echoes of the silent vessels, wandering without purpose. Whether tricks of reflection or whispers of history, the sight always left the same feeling: smallness, humility, and wonder at what lies beyond understanding. Let that wonder make you lighter. You don't need to follow every detail. Just drift with the calm, the rhythm of the story guiding your breath. Over time, the silent ships became more than tales, they became symbols. To sailors, they represented surrender. The idea that not everything must be conquered or explained. That sometimes the most powerful thing a person can do is simply listen to the sea and accept its mysteries. Each time one of these ghostly vessels was spotted, it reminded those who traveled the waters that life itself is fragile. That control, though comforting, is never complete. The ocean decides who reaches shore and who becomes part of its story. The sea is calm now. You can rest with it. The silence here is not empty, it's full of peace. Let it fill the space between your thoughts, like water finding stillness after a long wave. By the end of each voyage, the stories would change. Some sailors swore they saw the ships vanish into light. Others said they simply drifted away into the horizon. But no matter the version, the meaning was always the same. The ocean holds more than we can ever see, and within that vastness, even silence has a voice. You can close your eyes now. The story slows to a whisper, gentle and endless. The waves roll softly in your mind, and the night carries you toward rest. The silent ships fade, but their calm remains with you as you drift into sleep. There is a kind of silence that only exists in the middle of the ocean. It isn't just the absence of sound, it's the presence of something vast, something that reminds you how small you are. For sailors, this feeling was constant. Each sunrise brought the same endless horizon, the same whisper of wind, and the same quiet question that lived deep in their hearts. What lies beyond what we can see? You're safe. The unknown in this story isn't meant to frighten, it's meant to remind us of calm humility. The world is wide, but peace can still live inside it. To many sailors, the unknown wasn't a monster or a spirit. It was emptiness itself, the idea that the sea had no edges, no clear answers. The further they traveled, the more it felt as though the ocean was watching them, measuring their courage, and even the strongest hearts could tremble when faced with that quiet, invisible gaze. In the darkness between stars, even familiar things felt uncertain. The creak of the ship could sound like a whisper. A splash could seem like footsteps. The imagination, shaped by exhaustion and fear, could turn the smallest noise into a sign of something greater. Not because they believed in evil, but because the human heart fears what it cannot name. Breathe slowly. Let that thought become lighter as it drifts away. The sea in this story is not dangerous. It's only a reflection of our own quiet thoughts. As the nights grew longer, sailors often spoke less. Some would sit alone, staring into the dark water, feeling the slow pulse of the waves against the hull. Others would hum softly, as if the sound could keep the silence from growing too large. It wasn't bravery or superstition, it was survival of the spirit, a way to stay human in a world that could swallow sound and reason alike. The fear of the unknown didn't always come from what they saw. Sometimes it came from what they didn't see, the moments when the sky turned black and the compass spun without meaning, when stars vanished behind thick clouds, direction disappeared. All that remained was trust. Trust in the waves, in the wind, and in the hope of returning home. Your mind can rest now. You're not lost in the ocean, you're resting beside it. The unknown is only a story tonight, and the sea is calm, patient, and vast. In every voyage, there came a moment when silence stretched too long, when hearts beat too fast, and the night seemed endless. That's when the stories of ghost ships, strange lights, and whispers became more than tales. They became protection, comfort for minds that needed to give shape to their fears. Even in their fear, there was beauty, because the unknown, though vast and unanswerable, carried mystery, and mystery made the sea sacred. It was not meant to be conquered, only respected. The sailors didn't seek to understand everything. They simply learned to listen. You're doing fine. Let your breath slow down. Let the calm of the sea fill the space around you. The story will stay gentle, steady, and kind, like the ocean at night, waiting quietly beneath the stars. As days turned into weeks, the ocean began to blur time itself. Morning and night looked the same, the sky melting into the sea like one unending mirror. For the sailors, this sameness could feel both comforting and terrifying. The longer they stared into the horizon, the more it stared back. They began to understand that fear does not always roar, it sometimes whispers, "You are safe." Let that stillness feel warm, not lonely. The story moves gently, just like waves against a wooden hull. The fear of the unknown had a strange rhythm. It didn't come all at once. It crept in softly, like fog rolling over the deck, or the slow fading of a star behind clouds. It was quiet, invisible, and patient. Some sailors said it was the ocean testing their minds. Others believed it was simply the weight of too much silence pressing down. When storms came, they almost felt relieved. The crash of thunder and wind gave sound to what they couldn't describe. It was better to face something visible, even if it was fierce, than to sit in endless calm wondering what hid beneath. The sea reminded them that not all danger is seen and not all stillness is peace. Breathe slowly. Let the sound of the sea in your mind roll in and out. You are here, not there. The unknown stays far away tonight. At times, when the stars were clear, the sailors found comfort again. They would trace constellations, naming each one like an old friend. The sky, at least, gave answers the ocean rarely did. Between them stretched a space of mystery, and that space was where stories were born. Some believed the unknown wasn't meant to be feared, but to be respected. They said that the sea, in its vastness, was a reminder of how little we truly control. It humbled them. It softened their pride. And in that humility, they found a quiet kind of peace, a lesson that the unknown is not the enemy, but the teacher. Your thoughts can rest here. Let go of what you don't need to understand. The story flows like the tide, steady and forgiving. When dawn arrived after a long night, the fear would fade like mist. The sailors would breathe easier, speaking softly as light returned. They didn't always laugh or sing, but they smiled, grateful that the sea had let them see another morning. Each sunrise felt like a gift they hadn't earned, a reminder that life, like the ocean, is both fragile and vast. And when the night returned again, so did the stillness. But this time, the fear was quieter, softer, more familiar. It was no longer an enemy, but a companion. The unknown was still there, as it always had been, stretching beyond the horizon. But the sailors had learned something important. Peace does not come from certainty, comes from acceptance. You can rest now. The unknown no longer feels far or frightening. It's only the quiet space between thoughts, the calm pause before dreams. The sea grows still, the story slows, and sleep drifts closer, and sleep and endless as the horizon itself. There are stories of ships found adrift, still moving with the tide, their sails half raised, their lamps faintly glowing, yet no voices called from the deck. The sea held them gently, as if cradling something it refused to return. These were the tales of the lost crews, whispered in quiet tones around small fires, when even the bravest men felt the weight of memory pressing against their hearts. You are safe. The story you're hearing is calm and distant, a quiet echo from another time. Let its rhythm slow your breath. When sailors discovered such empty vessels, they entered with caution. Every plank creaked underfoot, every rope hung still. Tables were set, clothes folded, journals left open mid-sentences, though time had paused mid-thought. But there were no people. The sea had taken them, and no one could explain how or why. That absence spoke louder than any storm. Some believed these were ships caught in sudden tragedy, a sickness, a violent wave, or a desperate decision. Others whispered that the crews had simply followed the horizon too far, vanishing into the same silence that haunted every sailor's dreams. The truth never mattered as much as the feeling it left behind, awe, sorrow, and a quiet acceptance that the ocean always collects what it is owed. Breathe gently. The silence in this story isn't heavy, it's peaceful, like dusk after rain. You can let it calm you. For those who found these drifting ships, the hardest part was not what they saw, but what they imagined. They would picture laughter once shared on that deck, footsteps that had once echoed their songs, that had once risen into the wind. Now only the sea answered, speaking in small waves and sighing wood. It was a place where human warmth had vanished, leaving only traces of life, soft and fading like ink under salt air. Each sailor who saw such a sight carried it forever. Some stopped sailing altogether, haunted not by fear but by reflection, the reminder that life could disappear quietly, without sound, without reason, and the world would simply move on. The sea teaches many lessons, but none more powerful than this, that everything we build upon it must eventually drift away. Rest with that thought. It's not sadness, it's serenity. The world, like the ocean, holds and releases, again and again. Let that rhythm ease you, like waves brushing against the side of a sleeping ship. And so, the stories of the lost crew spread, not as warnings, but as reminders of the sea's mystery. They were told softly, with respect, for no one mocked those who vanished. 2 sailors, each lost ship was part of something larger, a story that continued somewhere beyond sight, perhaps not gone, only moved, carried gently by the same hands that guide every tide. You can drift with them now. The night is wide, the sea is calm, and your thoughts can rest like anchors sinking slowly into quiet water. As the years passed, the stories of the lost crews became part of the sea's identity. Every sailor had heard at least one version. Some ships were said to reappear years later, drifting quietly near distant coasts. Others were never seen again, swallowed completely by waves and memory. The ocean gave no explanation, only silence, and that silence became legend. You're safe, and the silence here is gentle. Let it soften your thoughts, the way fog softens the edge of the horizon. There were journals recovered from a few of those abandoned ships, words written in haste, then cut off mid-line, sentences that ended without a final mark. They spoke of calm seas, of strange lights in the distance, of an uneasy feeling that something was near. Then, nothing more. The pages were salt-stained and faded, as though the sea itself had wanted to keep its secrets. For those left behind, the families who waited on distant shores, the lost crews became part of prayer and memory. Each wave that touched the land was a reminder. They would look to the horizon at dusk, wondering if their loved ones still sailed somewhere just beyond sight. The sea, though vast, felt personal when it carried someone you loved away. Breathe slowly. The story isn't sad, it's gentle, like the echo of something remembered, not mourned. Let it settle quietly within you. Among sailors, there grew a quiet superstition that to speak the names of the lost too often was to invite the sea to listen. So, their stories were told carefully, in whispers, as though the ocean itself could overhear. It wasn't fear, it was respect. The kind of respect one gives to something far greater than oneself. At night, under the stars, the stories felt different. The same sea that had taken so much could also bring peace. The wind carried both memory and mercy. And when sailors closed their eyes, they sometimes imagined the lost crews still sailing somewhere calm, free, their ships guided by starlight that never faded. Your thoughts can drift with them now. There's no rush, no ending, only the gentle pull of the current leading you deeper into rest. In time, the idea of the lost crews became something more than tragedy. It became a symbol of acceptance, a recognition that not everything must be found to be remembered. The ocean holds both absence and beauty, and in its stillness there is balance. The sea takes, the sea returns, and in between, it teaches silence. Even now, centuries later, when people speak of those lost ships, they lower their voices without knowing why. Perhaps it's because the ocean, in its vast quiet, still listens. And perhaps Somewhere in that silence, the lost crews still drift part of the water, part of the wind, and part of every story told beneath the endless sky. You can rest now. The waves have slowed, the story fades, and your thoughts, like those ships, find stillness at last. The sea holds them gently in tonight. It holds you too. There is one tale that drifted further than any other. It crossed oceans, whispered through centuries, and became part of every sailor's imagination, the legend of the Flying Dutchman. It was said to be a ship doomed to sail forever, never touching land, its captain and crew trapped between sea and sky. For sailors, seeing it was not just strange, it was a sign, a quiet warning that something was about to change. You're safe here. This story is only a soft memory carried by time. Let the mystery feel calm, not fearful like mist moving across the water at night. The earliest stories spoke of a captain who defied nature. Some said he was stubborn beyond reason, refusing to turn back even as storms rose high around him. Others said he swore to reach his destination, no matter what stood in his way. But the sea does not bend to human will. The waves rose higher, the winds howled louder, and when the storm swallowed the ship, it was never seen in the light of day again. Yet, on moonlit nights, sailors claimed to glimpse it, a pale ship gliding through the air above the water, its sails glowing faintly, its course unwavering. It made no sound, left no wake, and vanished when looked at too long. No one who saw it forgot the sight. Even those who didn't believe found themselves scanning the horizon, half expecting to see that ghostly outline waiting beyond the fog. Breathe slowly. The story is quiet. The sea around it is calm. You're listening safely from the shore of your own mind. The legend of the Flying Dutchman was never meant to terrify, it was meant to remind. To sailors, it symbolized pride, fate, and the limits of human control. The ocean could forgive mistakes, but not defiance. And though no one truly knew if the ship ever existed, the lesson it carried traveled further than the story itself. Over time, the tale changed with each retelling. Some said the captain was cursed for his arrogance. Others said the ship was bound to wander until its wrongs were forgiven. But most sailors didn't care about the reason, they only cared about what it meant when the Dutchman appeared. To them, it was a signal of danger, a storm ahead, a change in fortune, or a test of courage waiting in the distance. You can let your mind rest on the surface of these words. The story moves like the tide never rushed, always returning. As the centuries passed, sightings continued. Even modern sailors claimed to see a tall ship shimmering above the horizon, glowing faintly in the distance. Scientists would later explain it as a mirage, a trick of light and air bending across layers of temperature. But for those alone on the sea, far from home and surrounded by darkness, explanation was small comfort. The feeling of seeing the impossible was something no science could erase. And so, the legend endured not because people believed it, but because it felt true. Every sailor, in some way, had seen things they couldn't explain. The Flying Dutchman became their symbol for all the mysteries they could never name. You can rest now. The ship drifts beyond the horizon, its light fading softly. The waves are steady, the air is still, and the story waits quietly for another night to be told. There was something poetic about the legend's endurance. No matter how much the world changed, new ships, new routes, new technology, the story of the Flying Dutchman remained. It drifted across time the same way it drifted across water, untouched by distance or doubt. And perhaps that is why it still lingers, like a soft voice carried by the wind, refusing to disappear. you're safe. Let this quiet legend move through you like a slow tide. There is no fear here, only wonder. Sailors often said the Dutchman appeared when the sea was too still, when even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The horizon would glow faintly, and a shape would rise tall, graceful, and silent. Those who saw it would bow their heads, whispering not in terror, but in awe. The sight was never loud or violent. It was delicate, peaceful, and impossible to explain. The ocean has a way of holding memory. Every wave carries a trace of what came before. Maybe the Flying Dutchman was never real in form, but real in meaning, a story created to express what humans always felt at sea: humility, longing, and the endless search for home. Breathe slowly. Let your shoulders soften, your mind loosen. The sea is quiet now. Some historians believe the legend spread because sailors needed something to anchor their fears. The idea of a ship sailing forever gave shape to the deep feeling of being lost, of never truly arriving. In that sense, the Dutchman was less a curse and more a reflection of the human journey itself. We all move forward, not always knowing where the current will lead. When the fog lifted and the stars returned, the vision always faded. The sea went back to its usual rhythm, and life continued as before. But the men who saw it carried the story home. They told it softly, around fires or beneath lanterns, their voices steady, their eyes distant. Each retelling became slower, gentler, like the waves calming after a storm. You can drift with the rhythm of that calm. The story doesn't demand attention, it invites rest. In the end, the legend of the Flying Dutchman became more than a ghost story. It became a meditation on the sea itself, a reminder that some things are meant to remain mysteries. Not everything is meant to be solved or touched. Some things are only meant to be watched from afar, with quiet respect. And so, the ship sails on, not through the ocean, but through time. It passes from voice to voice, never resting, never fading completely. The world changes, but the horizon remains. Somewhere out there, beyond sound and sight, the Flying Dutchman still glides across the calm, carrying the memory of every sailor who ever dreamed of the unknown. The waves grow softer now. The legend drifts into silence, and the sea becomes still again. You can rest, knowing the story has settled into calm waters. The ship is gone, but peace remains. Every mystery has a beginning and, sometimes, an explanation. For centuries, sailors shared stories of ghostly ships and glowing sails, believing the sea itself could summon visions. But as time passed and understanding deepened, science began to offer gentle answers to what once seemed impossible. Yet somehow, the truth made the stories no less beautiful. You're safe here. The calm you feel now is part of the story's rhythm. The sea, the science, and the mystery all belong to the same peaceful silence. One of the most common explanations for ghost ships came from light. On certain nights, temperature layers above the water bend light into strange shapes. This effect, known as a mirage or superior refraction, can make distant ships appear to float above the horizon, glowing faintly. To the eyes of weary sailors, it was not science, it was wonder, shaped by exhaustion and the vastness of the ocean. Another natural illusion is called Fata Morgana, named after a complex mirage that can stretch and distort objects far beyond their true form. It turns sails into towers, ships into ghosts, and horizons into shifting walls of light. For sailors guided only by their eyes, such sights felt alive, appearing and vanishing like dreams that refused to explain themselves. Breathe slowly. You don't need to imagine every detail. Just feel the calm of understanding unfold gently. like the tide retreating from the shore. Even the eerie glow sometimes seen on ship masts had a reason. Sailors called it St. Elmo's fire, a flicker of blue light that danced along the rigging during storms. In truth, it was a small electrical discharge created by friction between air and moisture. But for those alone at sea, watching it shimmer in silence, it was easy to believe the ocean itself was speaking in light. The sea, after all, has always been a place of illusions. Distance bends, sound carries strangely, and time moves slower. What science would one day call refraction or ionization once felt like magic. For sailors without instruments or maps, the unknown was not something to be solved, it was something to be lived. You can rest in this balance between fact and feeling, between what's known and what's mysterious. Both can exist quietly together, like stars reflected on still water. Understanding didn't erase the old stories. If anything, it made them richer. Knowing that light and air could create visions did not make the Flying Dutchman less haunting. Less haunting, it made it human. It showed how imagination and perception weave together, turning science into story and story into comfort. Each discovery about the sea revealed not only how it works, but how deeply humans wish to understand it. The ocean teaches humility, because even when we find answers, there will always be more questions drifting just beyond sight. Your thoughts can rest now. The science and the story move together in peace. You're safe on calm waters, carried gently toward the edge of dreams. In time, what had once been legend became curiosity. Scientists, explorers, and sailors began to look more closely at the patterns of the sea. They learned how layers of warm and cool air could shape light into something living, how fog could twist shadows into motion, and how the ocean itself could whisper through sound waves that travel farther than sight. The mysteries didn't vanish, they simply changed shape, finding new meaning in knowledge. You're safe. The world you're hearing about is calm and distant. Let that calm wash over you, as gentle as a breeze across quiet water. Some researchers later recreated the same ghost ship effect in controlled conditions. With the right temperature, light, and angle, ships over the horizon really could appear to hover, upside down or glowing faintly in the air. To early sailors, these were omens. To modern eyes, they are reflections, proof that the sea and sky sometimes mirror each other in unexpected ways. But even with answers, something remained sacred. Because knowledge does not remove wonder, it deepens it. To understand that the ocean can bend light and stillness into illusion is to glimpse the artistry of creation itself. The sea, in its endless balance of logic and beauty, reminds us that truth and mystery can live side by side without conflict. Breathe softly. You don't have to remember every word. Just let them pass by like ripples, fading gently as they move. Many sailors who once feared the horizon came to love it instead. They began to see beauty in the very things that had once frightened them: the glow of mist, the shifting shapes of clouds, the way moonlight glides across water like silk. To understand nature was to make peace with it, and in that peace they found rest. When storms rose, they no longer blamed unseen forces. They listened to the wind, read the stars, and trusted the sea's rhythm. The unknown was no longer something to escape, it became a companion, one that taught patience, respect, and awe. Let that same peace fill you now. The world is wide and still, and kind in its own quiet ways. Even now, centuries later, when someone stands at the edge of the shore and watches the horizon shimmer, they are part of that same story. They see what those sailors saw: the play of light, the meeting of sky and sea, and, for a moment, They understand how mystery can still feel alive. The sea no longer hides its secrets from us, but it still holds them gently, waiting for anyone willing to look long enough. And maybe that's what all those stories were trying to teach, that the unknown is not meant to be feared, but observed with calm eyes and a humble heart. You can rest now. The sea is quiet, the mystery soft. Knowledge has not ended the story, has only made it slower, calmer, more human. Let the waves of thought fade and drift peacefully into sleep. After fear comes stillness. It always does. When the waves settle and the wind grows soft again, the sea becomes something else entirely gentle, forgiving, and endlessly calm. For sailors who had faced storms and seen strange things on the horizon, these quiet moments felt like a gift. The fear would fade slowly, like mist retreating under sunlight, leaving behind only silence and deep relief. You are safe. The sea in this story has grown quiet now. Let that quiet move through you, soft and steady, like slow breathing after a long day. When calm returned, the world seemed sharper. The sound of ropes creaking felt like music. The sparkle of light on water looked almost alive. Sailors would sit on deck, eyes half closed, listening to the sea breathe. It was in these moments that they remembered why they had chosen this life, the endless horizon, the stars above, and the sense of belonging to something far larger than themselves. The ocean, once feared, became their companion again. It had scolded them with storms, frightened them with silence, and tested their patience with its mysteries. But now, in stillness, it offered forgiveness. Each ripple against the hull was like an apology. Each soft gust of wind was a quiet reassurance. You have endured, and you are still here. Breathe slowly. You've reached the peaceful part of the voyage. The worst has passed, and calm surrounds you. At night, when the stars returned, the sailors found comfort in familiar constellations. They would trace the same patterns their ancestors once followed. The stars, unchanging and steady, gave them direction and a kind of peace that only comes after surviving chaos. Above them, the heavens stretched wide. Below, the ocean reflected it back. It was as if the world itself had taken a deep breath and decided to rest. Sometimes, one sailor would hum softly, a tune passed down from port to port. The others would join in, their voices blending with the sound of the waves. The music wasn't for performance, it was for peace. A way of saying to the night, we're still here, we're still human, and we still remember home. Your heart can rest now. The fear has turned to calm. The storm has turned to rhythm. You are safe in the quiet between waves. In the stillness, time seemed to slow. The sailors no longer counted the hours or the miles. They simply existed, floating between sky and sea, between wakefulness and dream. The ocean no longer felt endless. It felt eternal, vast but kind. For a few brief moments, they forgot about danger and distance, and simply listened to the sound of peace. And in that sound, they discovered something beautiful. That fear, no matter how strong, always fades. What remains is calm, reflection, and gratitude for the silence that follows. The same sea that once frightened them now held them gently, like a cradle rocking them toward rest. You can drift too. Let go of the noise of the day. Feel the calm of this moment, as if you were floating beneath a sky full of stars, with nothing left to fear. When calm returned for good, the sea began to sound like breathing, slow, steady, patient. Every wave was a heartbeat, every soft gust of wind a whisper of life continuing. For the sailors, this was the reward for their endurance. They didn't need victory or treasure. Peace itself was enough. The ocean, after all its fury and mystery, always gave something back. Quiet. You're safe. The calm you hear in this story is the same calm you can feel now. Let it rest gently on you, like a blanket of slow-moving air. During these quiet nights, the sailors often found themselves thinking of home. Not the walls or the roofs, but the small ordinary sounds, the crackle of firewood, footsteps in the sand, the hum of voices carried by evening air. They realized that calm wasn't only a place, it was a feeling, something they carried within them, even in the middle of the sea. Sometimes they spoke to each other in hushed tones, not about storms or ships, but about small memories, a mother's song, the scent of rain, a familiar path through the forest. The ocean, listening as always, held those stories like secrets beneath its surface. It was in those quiet exchanges that the bond between men deepened, built not on strength or survival, but on the simple act of sharing silence. Breathe slowly. You're floating through this story, safe and weightless. The sea is calm, and so are you. As dawn approached, the world began to glow again. The line between sky and water brightened into silver. For a moment, everything was perfectly still. No fear, no sound, only the gentle hum of life continuing. The sailors watched the horizon, not in search of danger, but with quiet gratitude for another day, another breath, another moment of peace. Some said that after facing the sea's darkest moods, they learned to see its beauty differently. Every calm wave carried meaning, every sunrise felt like forgiveness. It wasn't the absence of danger that made it peaceful, it was the acceptance of it. Fear no longer had power because they had learned to live with it and beyond it. Let that thought stay with you. Peace isn't the opposite of fear, it's what remains after fear has passed. Let it fill your breath, slow and easy. When night returned again, it was gentle. The sailors lay still beneath the stars, listening to the ocean whisper around them. The same sea that had once frightened them now sang them to sleep. And in that rhythm, steady, endless, and kind, they found what they had always been searching for: rest. The ocean, like life itself, is not always calm, but it always returns to stillness. And in that stillness, we remember who we are: small, temporary, yet deeply at peace with the vastness around us. You can rest now. The fear has long passed, the storm forgotten. The sea is soft, the air is warm, and the horizon fades into quiet light. Let yourself drift into that silence, the same silence that comforted the sailors when all they wanted was peace. Long after the sails were lowered and the stories faded into whispers, the legends of the ghost ships remained. They became more than tales of fear, they became reflections of the human spirit. To those who crossed the sea, the ghost ships were not just symbols of mystery, but of endurance, memory, and the quiet strength found in facing the unknown. You are safe. The story is calm now, gentle as twilight. Let each word flow slowly, like ripples spreading over still water. Through generations, sailors continued to tell the same stories, not to frighten, but to remember. The tales were passed from father to son, from crew to crew, until they no longer belonged to anyone, they belonged to the ocean itself. Each retelling softened the edges, turned fear into wonder, and gave meaning to the vast silence between waves. The ghost ships came to represent something universal: the idea that even in disappearance there is presence. The empty decks, the silent sails, the vanished crews, they all reminded those who listened that life leaves traces. Every person, every journey, leaves behind echoes that drift quietly through time, just like the ships that were never found. Breathe slowly. You don't have to chase the meaning, just let it rest beside you, quiet and light. For sailors, the ghost ships became a mirror. They saw in them their own fragility, their courage, and the strange beauty of uncertainty. To live on the sea was to accept that not everything could be known, and somehow that acceptance made the world feel larger, more alive. The mystery became part of their peace. When the sea was calm and the stars were clear, sailors would sometimes say they saw faint lights on the horizon, teeny flickers that seemed to move with purpose. No one called them omens anymore. They were simply reminders that somewhere out there the stories still drifted, carried by time and tide. Your thoughts can drift too. You don't need to hold them, just let them float like small lanterns on dark water. Even today, those old stories linger, finding new forms in books, songs, and quiet conversations. The ghost ship has become a part of our collective dreaming, a story that reminds us that mystery and peace can exist together. What was once fear has become comfort, something to listen to in the night when the world is silent and sleep feels near. The legend endures not because of what it explains, but because of what it doesn't. It invites stillness, reflection, and calm. It teaches that not every ending needs resolutions. Some stories are meant to drift forever, glowing faintly on the horizon of our thoughts. You can rest with that idea now. The sea has grown quiet again, the sails have lowered, and the ship moves gently with the tide. The story is still here, but it no longer needs to be told. It can simply be felt, soft, distant, and endlessly calm. As centuries passed, the ocean changed, but the stories did not. The ghost ships continued to drift in the minds of those who looked out over the water. They became symbols of endurance, of memory, and of how even silence can carry meaning. The sea may no longer belong to wooden ships and sails, yet the mystery remains, hidden in every reflection and wave. You're safe and calm. The story is almost at rest. Let the words move slowly, like the tide returning home. For some, the ghost ship became a metaphor for time itself, moving endlessly, touching lives, vanishing into the mist, then returning again in whispers. History is much the same. The past never truly disappears. It drifts quietly beneath the surface, waiting to be seen again when the light is right. Every story, no matter how faint, leaves a trace. And perhaps that is why these tales still find us, even now. Because deep down, we understand what those sailors felt, the mix of awe and humility before something vast and unknowable. We still stare into our own horizons, searching for answers in the quiet distance. The sea has simply changed its shape. Now it lives in memory, in dreams, and in stories like this one. Breathe softly. You've traveled far tonight, but the waters are calm. Let your thoughts slow with the rhythm of the waves. In the end, the legacy of the ghost ship isn't about fear, it's about peace. It's the understanding that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, but cherished. The ocean still listens, the stars still reflect, and somewhere in that endless stillness, the ships still drift, beautiful, unreachable, and forever part of the world's quiet heart. So as the sea grows still and the night deepens, imagine those ghostly sails fading into the mist, their stories now part of the water's eternal song. You can rest knowing that not every unanswered question needs to trouble you. Some are meant to lull you into calm, just like this one. Your journey through the waves is ending now. Let peace fill the quiet that follows. If you've enjoyed this quiet journey through history, I invite you to subscribe and return next time. There's always another forgotten story waiting for you. Thank you for listening, for resting here, and for letting these calm words keep you company tonight. Next time, we'll drift into another mystery, one whispered in the smoke of ancient knowledge. A question that has haunted minds for centuries. Why did the Library of Alexandria burn? Until then, may your night be gentle, your thoughts light, and your dreams endless as the sea.